shall be discounted 10%. Accounts of residents of our tax-based service area accounts shall be paid in full when the insurances allowables are met. Accounts of residents of our tax-based service area who are not insured shall be paid in full when their Medicare allowables are met. Residents outside our service area shall pay full charges listed above except when mandated by federal or state regulation, i.e. Medicare, Medicaid. Indigent patient bills may be written off to the extent that the receiving hospital writes off that patient's hospital bill. This ordinance shall become effective on September the 15th, 2012. All ordinances and resolution or parts thereof in conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. Each of the provisions of this ordinance are severable in the decision of any court having jurisdiction as to the validity of any provision shall not affect the remaining provisions. And attached to this, for the record, is a definition of how the charges are broke down. I believe Mr. Pettis did do a good job of breaking these down for everybody to read. Okay. Yes, sir.
Discussion?
Yes.
I believe that those codes and services that are attached, definitions, need to be made part of the ordinance by appendices, just like we do all the other definitions. And also, it's a very minor. There's an abbreviation in the first full paragraph after the list of charges, where it's talking about all Eureka Springs EMS. EMS has not been defined and identified after the first mention of that in the ordinance.
Any further? Ms. Ballas?
When we see the now therefore be it ordained section, it says that, and before that also, it says section 2.36.09 should be amended to read that section 2.39.09. We're going to change the section from 2.36 to 2.39, or I don't understand how
Okay.
that is relative.
I understand what you're saying. That one, does anybody have the city code book? It should be in there
Yeah,
under
right here.
ordinances. I don't have mine.
Question?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's appropriate that the last sentence in that same paragraph I was talking about is appropriate. City code and state code stipulate when ordinances become effective. I don't think we should be spelling out when this ordinance will become effective.
Mr. Williams?
To address your concern, the reason that there's a date in this one is that to set for Medicare and Medicaid purposes, as I understand it, it needs to be a set date so that they can have their billing system up and running. If they don't have their billing system up and running on the date, it's going to cause a lot of confusion. And codes or ordinance are allowed to have an effective date as long as they do not violate the minimums. And this would not violate the minimums if you pass it and publish it by August 15th.
Then we need to state that that's in there due to the Medicaid system requirement. Because I would challenge if for some reason we don't get 3 readings in a timely manner and wait 30 days for this to become effective, we're basically making an emergency clause out of saying that it's going to be effective this September 12th.
I would suggest to solve that problem that if you read it this way and you fail to get it passed by the 15th of August and get it published by that date, that you then do attach an emergency clause to create that.
Ms. Ballas, you had your hand up.
We don't have a section 2.39.
Do we have a 236?
We do.
It's
Okay.
2.4409.
09.
So it's 2.36 then. If somebody has
There isn't a 2.3609.
2.36 is finance department,
It's
actually.
2, and it
It's
doesn't
listed
go up
under
to 9.
2.4409 in my
That's
code.
bizarre.
Yeah.
So each of these
Goodness.
three,
Let's get one good number that it's under?
Well, fire department is chapter 2.44, so I would think that 2.44 would be relevant.
Page 24, it's ambulance and related services, 2.4409.
So it should be 2.44? Okay.
Okay, and also my other point is perhaps it might be appropriate to
Should be 2.
reference, where do these codes come from? The ICD-9, DCM,
You'd have to ask Mr.
ICD-9?
Pettis.
Mr. Pettis would probably know. It may be appropriate somewhere in here to reference, just like we reference the International Building Code when it comes to some of these other, like building and construction, different things like that. We, for instance, reference the International Building Code. Perhaps it would be appropriate to reference the code books that these codes come from. It might be ICD-9. It might be, I'm not exactly sure where their codes come from. Excuse me, but it might be appropriate in here to reference the code book. So if anybody has any questions about what these codes are or what services they relate to, they could be referenced. They could be, the code book could be referenced here, so they could actually go get that publication and see what those codes and services related to. Just a suggestion.
I would suggest you not adopt a code book without knowing the entire code book applies. If you want to adopt definitions for those separately, that may be appropriate. But don't adopt a code book that may be several hundred pages of other material that then becomes the law of the city.
All I'm saying is perhaps these codes should be referenced by reference, just like I said, just like we reference the International Building Code in some of our, for instance, planning and zoning codes. Perhaps that the ICD-9 code book or what, and I've read them. It's codes. All it is codes. It tells you codes. It tells you what the services are. All I'm saying is these, for ease of reading, these code we could put a reference in this that says, however we write it in the other ordinances, that it could be referenced. You can reference this code book because it's what the insurance companies use.
Those code books that you're referencing for planning are actually adopted law of the city. We adopt those individual codes. We do not just reference them.
Okay. I think
Just
maybe
adopt your definitions if you want to add definitions. Don't adopt the code books they're in.
Why could you not reference the code book? Just like we do the International Building Code. Certain things we reference the International Building Code. We could reference the code book that sets these forth. And then instead of having a big, long, fat ordinance, people could simply reference the book that these codes came from.
Then your code stands to be outdated if those code books are changed or unavailable for some reason. We adopt the building codes. They are our law, the entire book, unless we accept it in certain instances, we remove certain passages. But otherwise, those are our law. The code book that you're running to reference, or the definition book, however you want to refer to it, is not part of ours, and we have no control over which edition or whatever is currently available. We do reference each individual code book and adopt it by the year code that we're using.
Do you understand? Have you ever looked at an ICD-9 book? Do you understand? I mean, I feel like we have a barrier. Because I've been in the medical profession for a long, long time, and I feel like we have a barrier. Perhaps I'm not expressing myself correctly to you.
If you want to adopt it, adopt only the definitions you want, not the entire book.
I'm not saying we adopt it. I'm merely saying we reference it so that people could look at that book and see what these are.
It's not been a problem.
It's the insurance standard. These codes are the insurance standard. If you have Advanced Life Support 1, that is A0426 across the board. That's what it is. That's how, when you're filling out your insurance forms, you plug that code in, and it means this. It always means this. I'm still not making myself clear, am I?
I see no benefit to that. If you look at our code that has been referenced always before, it's not been a problem.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we want to make sure that 2.4409 is the correct number. So that's correct. Okay, so All of those numbers need to be changed. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that I can see.
Then I would move that we change all the references to 2.36 and 2.39 to 2.4409.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is just on amending the numbers. There was also a question about the ordinance shall become effective with September the 15th. What was the final decision on that one? There was some discussion over some concerns about that, so and we didn't reach a decision. Mr. Pennell, I think you
Well,
voted.
I still have a concern about not showing the attached number. The Medicare codes and service codes aren't even, the ALS, BLS, and BS and SCs and whatever aren't even defined in this ordinance, and that's not even good grammatical character. If
Have they ever been
excuse me,
defined?
the BLS and ALS, I'm sorry. I move that we make the definitions appendix as an appendix, whether it's 1 or A, to the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, all in favor to attaching the additional 3 pages to this with the definitions?
It's 2 pages.
I've got 3 pages.
I got 2.
I don't think he needs the 3
Okay.
pages.
One is just an explanation. If you want to go back with the last 2 pages with just the numbers and each brief explanation. Okay,
One's just the proposed
Okay.
changes, which wasn't
all right,
part
with
of
the
it.
2-page definition of the Medicare codes and 2 pages, okay. All in
And a,
favor, say aye.
and a reference in the ordinance.
Mr. Bray?
I'm not, I'm not in favor of this. I'm not sure, these definitions. I know Mr. Pettis has done a great job, and we ask for this for our own information. I'm not sure that they need to be part of the ordinance. I mean, we've got the ordinance in there, and it's been in there for quite a while, and I've never heard anybody ask what they stood for until we got to the council this time. And we got a little definition for it, and I'm perfectly pleased and happy with what we've got. I don't see it spend any cost on publication for those definitions. But that's just
The
me.
appendix doesn't have to be publicized.
All right, I believe there's a motion and a second on the floor to attach the last 2 pages with Medicare codes and explanations and their prices attached to. And there was a second, I believe, so that'll be what the amendment to the just read ordinance, the second amendment to the just read ordinance would be. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Okay, better roll call it then, just to be sure.
Question before,
Yes. Okay, yes.
is it an A or a 1?
I'm sorry?
What are we going to go with? We have appendices defining everything else. If
Do we have any ideas on that one? Because I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, he's wanting to know if you're going to refer to it, I think, as
Appendix
Appendix A
A
or
or
Appendix
Appendix
1.
one.
Actually, your ordinance is going to need to be amended to include the appendix. So you can choose A or 1. I think A is very common in our code book, but the codification system, you can use either one. But you need to rewrite your ordinance now to include that.
I'm not a lawyer, but I think I can do it very simply by the second paragraph, 2.4409. Public requesting or in need of such services as defined in Appendix A.
Now,
Make that a motion to amend the ordinance.
Second.
Mr. Weaver?
I do want to caution you again, as I cautioned Ms. Balance a moment ago, about adopting definitions that can be changed by another entity other than you. If you do it the way you're saying, these are going to become your permanent definitions. And if Medicaid or Medicare or someone else in the insurance industry come up with a new definition that becomes the universal definition, your code is going to be out of date.
Yes, sir.
If we change definitions in the sign ordinance, we go in and we make a change to the appendix. We made a change in the appendix for definitions for the other stuff. We can go if Medicaid, if the fire department comes in and tells us these codes have been changed, then we'll write an ordinance change to Amendment A, Appendix A. You know, it make things so difficult.
Has this been part of the previous code?
No.
Has this been in effect how long?
Not sure, but at least as long as I've been city attorney. It's 10 years.
Okay. We still have a motion and a second on the floor. Get the clerk to repeat the last motion, and then we'll vote on it.
Ken, Mr. Pownell, move to include the definitions and what the codes mean. And it was interpreted as 2 pages of definitions, which I don't think it really needs to be. And Ms. Balance seconded, and it passed 4-2.
All right, now we need to go back to the twice amended ordinance. Is that correct, Mr. Weaver? You go back to the original ordinance, you got the First Amendment, then the Second Amendment, then you go back, once the amendments have been made, you need to vote on the whole amended ordinance
As
with the
amended, yeah.
inclusions, yes. Okay. And this will be a roll call vote. Or can we do a voice, since it's amended twice in first
It could be a
reading?
roll call with this, since it's first reading.
Okay.
Point of clarification, do we have 2 pages for definitions on Appendix A, or is it necessary? I don't know, depending on how it's typed, it can be 1 page, it can be, I only had 2 separate pages. Somebody said they had 3, but I'm just wanting to make sure that.
One
we
is
got
the ordinance, one is the proposed MS charges definition. Looks like this.
The proposed isn't part of.
That's not part of it.
Appendix A.
It's the other
Okay.
two that has
So
more
it's 2
definitive.
pages.
Okay, yeah, 2 pages. Yes, sir.
I'm going to vote for the ordinance, obviously, but I'd like Mr. Pettis, if he would be able to be here next time to make sure that we're not making a mistake by including these definitions as per what our city attorney said. We have the changes in sign ordinance content, you know, I don't think they're the same thing as medical. Somebody else can change those definitions without us even knowing about it. So I'd like Mr. Pettis to be able to make sure that he's comfortable with adding that into the ordinance.
Okay. So that's not really an amendment to the ordinance. That's just a suggestion for him to be here, and I think we can read
Yes,
that.
sir.
Okay. This will be a roll call vote on the amended ordinance.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Mr. Raphael,
Yes.
Mr. Berry, Ms. Lindblad,
Yes.
Mr. Pownell,
Yes.
Ms. Balance.
Yes.
6-0.
I believe that covers it. All right, next on the agenda would be number 6, taxi franchise discussion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Main second, floor is open. Yes, sir.
I would like to set a workshop to discuss the taxi ordinance. Right now we have about 2 lines that constitute the taxi franchise. We don't even require signs on cars and things like that, and I think it deserves a little more attention from council, so I'd like to propose that we have a workshop regarding taxi franchise.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Did you realize you chairman by making that
Apparently it's
proposal.
carried 6-0. I didn't hear any nays.
Aye.
Okay, workshop, you want to set the date for the workshop now? Yes, sir.
I would prefer that we do it as we have in the past, where the city clerk finds what our best available days are for us to all get together soon.
Okay. Moves us to number 7, group tour trams discussion.
Move to discuss.
Second. Need a second to get it on?
Second.
All right. Floor's open. Ms. Balance.
Uh, In our memo that we got from the Transit Department of May 12, it says that they're having trouble with one of their trams. It says that the trams are 15 and 16 years old and it's getting tougher to keep them going. And in Mr. Smith's opinion, when it comes time to renew the tour group franchises, these trams may not be available. Since the FTA will not fund sightseeing vehicles, funding will have to be found to replace those vehicles or find another option to allow bus groups to see the historic loop. When tour group franchises came up earlier, we talked about that, and I tried to kind of give council a heads up that probably truly the trams were getting old and they would need to be replaced in the not too distant future. As we know, transits that will not fund sightseeing vehicles, and so that puts it on the city. In other words, it puts it on all the taxpayers to buy a new tram or not. In these fragile financial times, I just don't know where we could come up with the funds to replace trams to support somebody's franchise. In other words, what I'm trying to say is we have animal drawn carriage franchise. We don't buy those people's animal drawn carriages. We have taxi franchises. We don't buy those people's taxis. We have other franchises. We have franchise with the power company. We don't buy the lines and the poles and bury the stuff for those franchises. In other words, we have all different kinds of franchises that are pretty much self-supporting. And in these fragile financial times, I just don't see how it's a benefit to all the people that pay taxes in this city to buy equipment for a tour group franchise when we don't buy equipment for any of the other franchises. So I just kind of wanted to bring it up and start talking about it and get the discussion on the table and let people think about if we, number one, if we can afford to buy new trams for the tour group franchises, and number two, if it's really appropriate to buy trams for the tour group franchises when we don't buy equipment for any of the other franchises for them to be able to do their business. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what I wanted to talk about. So I'm willing to let anybody else talk about it, or if you want to, we can just let this drop off the table until such time as Transit brings it forward to us.
Second.
I did not make that a motion.
Oh, all right.
But certainly it's something we need to think about, and we need to kind of look at the big picture. And so that's what I'm hoping that the people at this table will do. Thank you.
Somebody make that, Ms. Lindblom.
When do the group tram franchises come up?
Well,
No?
we just did them. And at that point, I said, hey, we're probably going to need new trams. We can't really afford it. The FTA won't fund it, and we're not buying equipment for any of the other franchises, so why should we do this? But once again, I was voted down.
Hannah.
My only other concern, as little as I know, is that we've been told in the past that Transit is a separate entity operating under separate funding, separate guidance, and not within our purview. My big concern would be turning around and having to relook at where this tram franchise falls in having it operated by transit, supported by the city financial coffers, as Ms. Balance has stated, that are, kind of weak anyway. So I think that's another thing that needs to be considered too, that and I haven't looked at the franchise agreement, that if all of a sudden these trams go belly up, do we have any obligation to provide new trams or other trams for them, and do they have an out because we can't provide them the equipment and the franchise agreement is no longer valid?
Further? Okay. You want to leave this on the agenda for further discussion? As we can get Smitty to
Sure.
come up here and
I
do a
would move
presentation.
to postpone this discussion until the first meeting in August.
Second.
Made and seconded to postpone the first meeting in August. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 8 is the deer hunt issue. Motion to discuss. Ms. Lindblad.
Since the fire department is here for the emergency, should
Thank
we
you.
go over that before we start a discussion of the deer hunt?
Would that be appropriate?
Because they're sitting here
Right.
waiting.
For what?
Council could amend their agenda, as I said a while ago. It's not precedented to do so, but if they want to do that, they could.
I'm sorry, what's he here for?
They're here because of your EMS ordinance
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
fees.
Probably.
At least
We
that's
can
the
give them time for-
anticipation.
We can give them some time to discuss if the council so desires. Yes, sir.
I move we suspend the rules and allow discussion of item 5 under new business.
Second.
That needs to be a roll call.
Okay.
It's for them to come. Thought maybe I fell asleep.
Mr. Pownell,
Yes.
Mr. Berry,
Yes.
Mr. Raphael,
Yes.
Ms. Balance,
Yes.
Mr. DeVito,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblad,
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. Bob? We'll come up and address the issues on this. There was some concern about where this information came from, and we'll let the council field the questions to where the definitions came from, I should say.
Yes, the Medicare codes that you see on the ordinance right here, the AR 429, et cetera, are codes that were developed by Medicare itself, and they're not universally accepted like the ICD-9 codes that all of the insurance companies use. This came directly out of the Medicare fee schedule back in about 2002 when they changed the way that they were reimbursing ambulance services. And so the document that came out of was an omnibus legislation that is a huge, huge document that I'm thinking wouldn't want to make part of the city's ordinances. I'd be glad to get you the fee schedule. I can copy it out of there that has those descriptions. The second page right on the third page that you have, this one, that gives the examples of each of those codes. Really, I made as an informational page so that each council member could understand what the charge is for and why there are different charges for different levels of service. Yes.
Are they a formal definition or?
No, these are not formal definitions. This was just something I put together that would make it more easily understandable. And the formal definitions are a little more difficult to understand than this would be. And so this was mainly for information, yes.
Oh, I would appreciate understandable definitions, and I applaud that. But at the same time, with the codes Do you not get enough advance notice from Medicaid or whomever, if those are going to be changing, where we could go forward with a change to Appendix A at any time, that this is totally unenforceable? I mean, number one, the understandability of the law is for the people to understand it along with us. You know, just this table doesn't need to understand it. But also, if we make these 2 pages, which are layman term definitions, which we have a lot of definitions that are layman terms, they don't necessarily come out of any particular book. Would you be able to provide information in a timely manner to this table, whomever may be sitting here, to request a change to Appendix A of Ordinance 2158 when it passes?
I'm sure that we can provide new definitions should the codes change.
Or if there's additions or deletions or whatever, you could come forward with a proposed ordinance change to the appendix, probably with an emergency clause saying we need to change these due to changes from Medicaid, and it wouldn't be
We can do that. I think it may be more cumbersome than what you guys will want to do. But yes, we can and will do that if that's what council's desire is. Yes.
Really, the definitions, I mean, I don't see as a layperson where I really need to know what the definition is. You're going to give my insurance company the bill. My insurance company is going to know what that definition is,
Yes.
and they're going to pay it according to that statement or that definition, or they won't.
That's correct.
I mean, to me, I think my concern is that it is cumbersome, and we may get into the issues of definitions being changed, and for whatever reason, maybe you get called on, you know, heaven forbid, some serious emergencies for a week or a month, and something gets slipped by, and that doesn't get changed.
As far as that goes, we could take the codes out of the ordinance completely and just leave the advanced life support 1, and that's the charge. We don't need the codes in the ordinance at all. We could replace the codes with an ALS 1 with advanced life support 1 and go with the ordinance that way. Might be more easy to understand for the public to understand than the way it's set out here.
I like that even better.
However you guys want to proceed is what I'll be glad to do.
I like that even better if it's understandable.
Any further? Yes,
If
sir.
I'm not mistaken, all we're really concerned about is changing the rates, right?
Yes.
And people need to be able to look at that, and I don't care if that's the case, then we don't really need anything that anybody can understand. I say that facetiously. So the easier, the better. If the ALS definition, the whole written out thing the service can replace the code, then I think that would be the way to go if it's easier. Whenever we do the second reading.
I think that would be an excellent way to proceed, and just write that, take the abbreviations and the codes out and just write the words out, and I think that'll be a little more understandable for the public. They'll be able to look at that and see it. When we file it, it'll be filed with these codes, but that's not really a matter of that needs to be in the law of the city.
Anybody else? Also, check your paperwork, the ordinance number. Council came up with 2.44.09 because we had 236 and 239, but
Okay.
apparently it's 44.
So it should be.
Unless you know something we don't know.
Here, rather than 23609, it should be 24409.
And then
So right here, and what about?
That's the ordinance number that stays.
Okay.
because this was titled 239 right here. So just move them all to 2.44.09. Okay. Anybody? Further questions? Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Reese. Moving on to number 8, deer hunt issue. Ms. Ballant, I'm sorry. Motion to discuss.
Make a motion to discuss.
Second.
Made and seconded. Floor is open. Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty. I've gotten a lot of phone calls and letters from people who are absolutely appalled that Eureka Springs is being made into a deer camp, that this hunt is going to go on from September 15th to October 7th with a tiny break in there so that the tourists can rush in and look at the leaves, and then they can, I guess, run out of Eureka Springs by November 10th and not be here until February 28th. I've had all kinds of questions about things. This is the schedule. I'm sorry I didn't have time to copy this, but we're going to have things going on all during the time that the hunt is going on, not just for the little break that's going on in the hunt. It's going to be going on during the all the Christmas celebrations that are going to be going on, and on into February, including Valentine's Day, which I had several B&B people call me up and say that, you know, Valentine's Day is a really big day for them. I've had several citizens call me, one in particular, who is surrounded by people who have signed up for the hunt, and she doesn't own very much property around her house. So she's afraid that, you know, something bad is going to happen. The mayor said at the last meeting that the city has tort immunity, and tort is a very tricky thing. There's no such thing, I found out today, talking to David Schoen. There's no exact thing as tort immunity. It depends on a lot of different things. There's many different kinds of torts. So the city could be liable for some things, and it could be liable under civil law. And I was looking through here at the Urban Hunt Protocol, which is the program that apparently the city, according to a letter that I think you signed and sent to Game and Fish, that we're not going to use the Arkansas Game and Fish Urban Deer Protocol, which among other things, because they do it in conjunction with the Arkansas Bowhunters Association, that the hunters are required to pass an international bow hunters education course. They have to attend an urban hunt orientation. After attending the orientation, hunters will be eligible to hunt all urban deer hunts for that year, that they pass a shooting proficiency test, that they pay an annual confirmation fee, which includes membership to the ABA, who carries liability insurance, that they provide a vehicle place card that must be signed by the representative of each municipality that he or she wishes to hunt, that they have to display this placard in their vehicle, that the hunt is in designated areas, hunt at least 50 yards, that's already established. I had people saying that when they voted for this hunt, not only did they not have really any idea that it was going to go on for such a long duration, but they also didn't have any idea that private property owners were going to be signing up for this. And when I looked back at the ordinance 2127, that established this deer hunt, it says, according to the regulations promulgated and time set by Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, which within the area prescribed by Arkansas Game and Fish, and people feel like that hasn't happened, that Game and Fish hasn't prescribed it, that mostly the committee that was set up to set up the deer hunt, headed, I'm assuming, from the article that was in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette by Earl Hyatt. You know, people are really upset about this, and this city council does have the prerogative to set parameters for this hunt, to say how the hunt should be conducted using possibly this program instead of having the city pick out bow hunters, and that the council can set a duration of time. Council can set all kinds of rules for this hunt. And a lot of these people feel like they haven't been represented because this, in my opinion, was a very poorly written referendum that is pretty wide open and doesn't really set any parameters. So it can be definitely up to this council to set the parameters of this hunt and decide what's going on. And citizens feel like, you know, they're going to be put at risk. This is something I'd like to pass out to the council that, one citizen kind of checked, and I checked, that tells the procedure when you kill a deer, what you have to do with the deer, how you kill the deer, how you clean the deer. People are saying, you know, how are the deer going to be taken care of as far as, you know, how long are they going to sit around? What if a deer is shot? And I know that the bow hunters might want to think, and the community might want to think that a deer's going to go down in a first shot, but we had an incident some time ago where someone shot a deer with a bow, and the deer ended up dead on someone else's property. And that's really a concern for people. What if they end up with a deer dying in their yard? And so I think that these are a lot of issues that need to be addressed by this council, and that perhaps we should look into setting parameters for the citizens on this hunt, because frankly, I think the duration of this hunt is absolutely ridiculous. And even if these hunters are going to be loading these deer into trucks, they're still going to be hauling dead deer through town while we're having such things as the Christmas Homes Tour, which is, you know, Eureka Springs is not a deer camp. Eureka Springs is a historic town where people come to relax for vacation. And one person even suggested that perhaps we hire a dart expert, you know, who can anesthetize the deer and then they can be killed that way. But, you know, people are really concerned about this. They're very concerned. And I don't know if the property owners are aware, as the mayor seemed to tell me at the last meeting, that the people that sign up for the hunt, are responsible if anything happens. That they're going to be responsible for what happens on their property. So that's, for right now, that's all I have to say.
I know you have a hand.
I have a question. Again, it's another one of these issues of things showing up in our box, not knowing where they came from. Is this the proposed or approved procedures that are going to be followed for the deer hunt?
No, sir. That came
Are
off
they
the
being
internet.
considered?
No, sir. Not those.
When will we be seeing those before the season? The only reason I ask is because there is one in here that several people have asked me about, particularly when we open it up to private property. Hunt at least 50 yards from any occupied dwelling without written permission. The size of lots in Eureka Springs, that's a pretty, you know, you go 150 feet, you probably got 2 or 3 houses. There's some things that really need to be considered before they define where the hunting is going to be, because if this would become one of the criteria, that means that I would have to go beyond my property line to identify where 50 feet is, and I think we're putting an awful lot of responsibility on somebody within the city, and I'm sure it's not Parks and Recreation, of defining all these private property owners that have signed up to allow hunters, and depending on what distances from property lines or houses, because again, the ordinance that was passed says it'll be in conjunction with the Game and Fish Commission rules and protocol. So I would be very concerned about checking private property owners that have signed up and being able to set out with a plat map and see what the distances are. If somebody, I could have given approval for somebody to hunt on my property, I'm going to have to go out, if this were one of the guidelines, and measure out 50 feet from the house or 50 yards from the house, because I sure know that the hunters aren't going to. And then somebody, if they did that, might have to take their name off the list. Just a suggestion that whatever they're considering putting into the protocol for the hunters.
Anybody else? Ms. Lindblad.
Yeah, in this article, it was in the Democrat Gazette, it says, what we did is we declared, this is Chief Hyatt, we declared the city a deer camp. That means the deer hunt committee can decide who gets each of the 15 permits to hunt deer in town. If someone has a criminal record or hunting violation, they probably won't get a permit. Declaring the city a deer camp really cut a lot of red tape, and it gives the city complete control over who is hunting inside the city limits. Otherwise, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission would control the hunt and choose the hunters. And it seems from what people have said to me is that's exactly what they thought was going to happen, that Arkansas Game and Fish Commission would choose the hunters. And they have big questions about a committee that is set up by whom? Who set up the committee, the deer hunting committee?
The city council.
Okay. That they would be qualified
You did?
to...
Yes, you did. Absolutely.
I guess I wasn't here.
When?
Have to go back and look at the minutes.
Okay. That they would be qualified, a group of people set up by the city council, that happened, would be qualified over,
Sleep.
Game and Fish. And this is the other option besides making, because I talked to the guy at Game and Fish, and this is the other option besides having the committee choose. And frankly, if we have to have this hunt, which I'm not even sure we do, I would think this would be a lot safer for the citizens of town. And I don't know that the citizens even saw this to make up their mind. But that's where I say that the referendum ballot didn't set any parameters, and this council has the prerogative to set parameters if the council chooses to do that. And it seems like a lot of citizens, especially the ones who aren't signing up for this hunt, would like some parameters set. And I know some of the businesses in town would like them set so we don't have dead deer being hauled through town while people are here for the Christmas parade. In fact, one person even joked and said maybe we should just include the deer in the Christmas parade.
Mr. DeVito?
Am I correct to understand that Game and Fish withdrew because of the nature of Eureka Springs and we didn't have enough public space to conduct a hunt?
I'll be more than glad to address all of these at one time when everybody gets the questions asked, because we have answers pretty much to every question that we've been asked so far. So, with the council's indulgence, I shall continue. The city council requested that a committee of one council member, Butch Berry, the police chief, Earl Hyatt, and 3 citizens be formed to contact Game and Fish to set up this hunt, to organize this hunt. That was done. At the request of the Arkansas Game and Fish, who stated, you don't have enough public property within your city limits to hold a hunt, we recommend, this is Game and Fish saying, we recommend you go to the hunt club portion of this issue and go with that. And that's exactly what we did at the recommendation of the Arkansas Game and Fish, who, at Ms. Lindblad's statement, is governing this or overseeing this. This was done at their request. And this is the way it was set up. This committee has worked hard. Mr. Berry has been there on most all occasions. We have addressed every issue that we have came across or been asked up until recently. I do have to state that we were given some erroneous information by the Arkansas Bowhunters Association in the fact that Game and Fish does not have the authority to go onto property and retrieve an injured deer. So that pretty much states that it should be a stronger relationship or bond or working situation between the property owner and the hunters. We can only give you the information that we're given, so we apologize for the erroneous information. We have taken every precaution. We have had open meetings. We have had little to no attendance by the public. We've had no phone calls to City Hall about this at all. The only phone calls we've had is people coming in to hunt and the people calling us to offer their property up for hunts.
It's because I don't want to talk to you.
I'm sorry? I thought I heard a comment. So if the city council doesn't like what we have done, then we'll give it back to you and you can do what you want to with it. How about that?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're saying that Arkansas Game and Fish does not have the right to come on to private property and retrieve a deer? Is that what you said?
That's what I just said.
Okay, so a deer gets shot, say, in my neighbor's yard, although I don't know if any of my neighbors have signed up for this. It takes a lot to kill a deer. The deer comes running onto my property, lands in my yard. It's dying. Arkansas Game and Fish can't come and pick it up, so how does it get picked up?
Animal control.
Well, you have to make a decision at that point to either let the deer suffer or let the hunter come get it.
And how am I supposed to find the hunter if the deer runs for some distance?
They usually don't run that far when they're shot from 30 feet away.
I don't care what they usually do. If it does, then what do I do? Where I live,
Yes, ma'am.
I own a lot of the property around me.
That's-
So a deer could come from any direction and land in my yard, and how am I supposed to know where the hunter is that shot the deer?
You call the police department, and the police department sends an officer, or they try to contact Game and Fish to contact the hunter, or we can go through our list that we will have of all the hunters and all the property owners surrounding that particular area, or in that particular area, and we will try to contact them because we'll have cell phone numbers for them.
And meanwhile, the deer is lying there suffering. Yeah.
Ma'am, I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know what you're asking me. I
Well,
answered
it's
it the
very
best way I can.
it's very clear what I'm asking you.
And it's very clear what I'm
asking
telling you.
You know, well, what if you don't know which hunter shot it? I mean, I had talked to one woman, and she owns very little property around her, and she told me all the people around her have signed up for this hunt, and she doesn't want to end up with a suffering deer in her yard. So how is she supposed to know which hunter to call, which hunter shot the deer?
She don't call the hunter. We contact the hunters
And so how do you know which hunter shot this particular deer?
because we'll know who's hunting in that area.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Berry, you're on the committee. Go ahead.
There's an easy
Do something.
solution. Miss Lindblad wants to argue this. As a deer hunter, if I shoot a deer and it goes, I'm going to follow that deer. It's going to leave a blood track. It's going to leave a blood trail. I, as a hunter, will follow it. If I see it's in Miss Lindblad's yard, I'm going to go up to her door, knock on her door, and say, do you mind? I killed a deer. It went onto your property. Can I retrieve it?
Okay,
Yeah.
then I guess the problem here is some people don't want dead deer on their property, and they have a right to not have a dead deer on their property, and that's the part that some of these people are upset about, that they don't have a right to say, I don't want a dead deer on my property.
That can't be answered. That can't be answered. What if a deer just walks on there and dies?
Well, it wouldn't die with an arrow in it, would it?
Hit by a car.
Okay. It's pointless to argue the point then. Like I said, if the council doesn't like the work that we've done on it, as prescribed by the council, in the fashion prescribed by the council and the Arkansas Game and Fish, then I'll give it back to you. Y'all can do what you want to with it. Yes, sir.
I think that's a very poor retort. I think,
Excuse me?
for the record,
Point of order.
State your point of
He
order.
has the floor right now.
I don't have the newspaper articles like my colleague has, but the former mayor, when this ordinance was passed, was quoted in the paper, this is not what I supported, and I don't believe this is what the people supported. For the record, I'm concerned that we are not having a hunt as the people voted. And I don't believe, if I heard the reading right, that it even follows the ordinance. Regardless of who is allowed to hunt where, within how many feet, and dead deer, whatever, I just want to go on the record that I don't believe that the people are getting what they voted for.
Ms. Balance, you had a problem? Issue? Something
me?
to say? I thought you had your hand up. Okay. All right. Unless the council changes what we have done, then the deer hunt is exactly like it's going to stay. Unless the council changes it. And if you want to change it, the people voted to have it, and that's what we're trying to comply with. So, yes,
What's the date of the first hunt?
September.
yes, it's in the order.
Let's see, I just had it. September 15th it begins and it runs until October 7th. And then the trees will turn and the tourists will come in and then they will vacate on November 10th. And I guess they're going to be gone till February 28th. So that's 2 weeks in September, and then it's most of November, December, January, February. So it's about 4 months and 2 weeks long.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that the Deer Committee provide to this table by the 15th of August the rules for the deer hunt.
It's not a problem. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further on this issue?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I to understand that what the people actually voted on in the ordinance that was created, am I to understand that it's impossible to have a deer hunt that is the deer hunt that the people voted for?
That's what they're getting.
What is what they're
Cram down their throats.
It may be repetitious, but I'm going to say it again. They wanted a hunt that Arkansas Game and Fish is overseeing.
Which they aren't.
They recommended not to have the urban deer hunt as prescribed in the little flyer that Mr. Pownell has because we do not have enough public property, such as Hot Springs Village, Heber Springs, and all the other places that are having these. They recommended, and I'm going to say it again, they recommended we have the club hunt. That's what we went with at the recommendation of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, who wanted them to oversee it. That was their input. I don't know how plainer I can make it.
So if it is impossible to deliver exactly what the people voted for, then why are we spinning our wheels and keeping on going and going and going to deliver something that the people did not vote for?
Because the city council said form a commission, form a committee with a city council member, the chief of police, and 3 citizens to make up this committee and figure out the best way to do it. At the recommendation, again, of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, they suggested we do the club hunt. They suggested we do the club hunt. Ms. Lindblad.
What club are you talking about? What club?